Well, thank you. This is really a treat to have all of you here in Washington with us, so welcome. Eugenio, I want to start with you. Your mother was a very famous actress in Mexico. Tell us a little bit about her life and how she influenced you.
Oh my God, well, I grew up watching her on telenovelas. I remember kids asking me at school, how does it feel to see your mother on television? I was like, same as you feel watching your mother in the kitchen. For me, it was like it's something natural. And so I grew up watching her working and doing all these characters. I was always amazed about how she constructed her characters. I remember once she did a telenovela called Maria Isabel. That was the first telenovela where the maid fell in love with the boss, and and she went literally. She went and we dropped her. I remember dropping her at a small town in Mexico, and she lived there for like a week and an entire week, so she could learn how to carry the kids, how to walk without shoes, naked, and it was really, really interesting, all the process. So for me, it was a true inspiration.
That's so great. Ramon, you have been, steadily working in this incredibly difficult environment. What do you attribute your success in moving up the ladder in the industry?
Definitely a difficult industry and to sort of sustain and be in it for a while, anybody knows that. But I think, hard work for sure, discipline without a doubt, an incredible support system. Similar to Eugenio, like I grew up with, my mom was incredible. I watched what she did to sort of provide for us, growing up in the Lower East Side of New York as a single mom. And so like I immediately understood hard work and the ethics and being disciplined and doing what you have to do. And I think what's helped me as well is I have a sports background in basketball, and that concept of hard work, I've always told I'm too small for basketball, and I was just determined. There was a fire in me that if anybody told me no, it became sort of gas to my fire, as opposed to it sort of putting me down. I was like, okay, great, I'll prove you wrong. So I think that discipline, that hard work, that mentality, really, loving what I do, recognizing how lucky I am to be an artist and do what we love, but to put in the work, to come prepared, to show up. I attribute a lot of that, and again, to a support system, people, family, friends that have been there for me throughout the process. I have an incredible partner, and the way she supports me allows me to keep doing what I love.
Angel, since we're talking about sort of influences growing up, tell us about what your life was growing up and what made you become the person you are today.
I'm born and raised in Puerto Rico, in the valley of Bairoa Caguas. And then when I came of age, I went to study in Santurce, and I stayed in Santurce. But for me, what was normal, running the streets in the streets as a little kid without any North Star. But something that I've always wanted, I got that tick when I first saw Indiana Jones in the movie theater. That was the first time that I was like, oh, I'm curious about how they did that. Like, yes, I was entertained, but I wanted to tell stories. And, given our colonial history, we have never had a chance to tell our real story. Everybody's been telling our story for us. And it's a very colonized version of our history. So my dad, he's been very active in the independence movement of the island. So he always encouraged me to try to find the truth outside of the system, because they're never telling you the truth. And I think that kind of like inspired me to tell stories about our background, about who we are, but be ourselves, be us, the ones who tell the stories about ourselves, as opposed to letting other people tell it for us. and that way challenge the colonized stories that we have heard about ourselves, and let ourselves be the ones that tell that stories instead.
Angel, I think that you are the first Puerto Rican to helm a multi-million-dollar studio film. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you do have that
Am
credit.
I?
I think
I
you do.
haven't thought about that. Like,
Yeah, I was trying to think of who else, and I couldn't think of anybody else, and I think that you are the first Puerto Rican to helm a major multi-million-dollar studio film. And I think we should just applaud him for that.
Thank you. It's very humbling to hear that.
Well, it's a truth. and tell us how it came about.
I mean, I have to say it started with my first film. I have to say La Granja. It's a movie I made in Puerto Rico with a micro budget, and working out, telling our stories, telling this allegory of what it's like to live, what it's like to live in the pursuit of happiness in a condition that prevents you from achieving it. Alex knows about that story, and that opened the doors when it premiered in Fantastic Fest, and it did really well internationally, and that was the first time that I got noticed by agents and managers. And then fast forward a little bit, 2017, after Hurricane Maria, I got the call to helm Charm City Kings for Will Smith. He had seen the movie, his team had seen the movie, and they wanted me to do that story. And in 2020, when it premiered in Sundance, it won Best Ensemble Cast in Sundance, and then the pandemic hit. But thanks to that, it premiered in streaming, in HBO Max, and that got a lot of attention, including DC Studios, and they've been working on this story about a Latino Mexican superhero, and they wanted a Latino to helm the project. So after watching Charm City Kings and seeing what we were able to do there, they reached out. I was in quarantine in Puerto Rico, and which was the weirdest thing. And quarantine in Puerto Rico, and I get that call, and my wife is there like, are you okay? I'm like, I think they just offered me a superhero movie. and she's like, just like that? And I'm like, yeah, just like that. And she's like, wow. I'm like, crazy, because all my whole life I was told that I had to, nothing good would happen if I stayed in the island. And the fact that something like this happened while I was in the island was a testament that, we don't have to adhere to what other people say that should happen to us. We can make things happen for ourselves, Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. Ramon, tell us a little bit about how you got into acting, and what were the things that made you pursue a career in acting?
Well, I kind of said, like I said earlier, I entered the business very strangely through sports. That sports was my outlet growing up. Basketball was a major part of my childhood. It got me out of the streets of New York City. I really wanted to play. I thought I was going to play professionally. That didn't happen, but I really wanted to be able to, not have my mother have to pay for my education was a big deal, knowing how hard she'd been working. And I was able to get a scholarship to play in college, which was huge. Through that, I had a friend of mine when I was done with college in New York City. He's a famous DJ, Babito Garcia, and he calls me out my window like you used to do back in the day before phones. And he was like, there's a Nike event, competition, do you want to come? And I wasn't even that interested. I was like, I don't know if I want to go. He goes, they're giving away free sneakers. I was like, psh, I'm there. Free sneak, I'm in. And so I went to the event, and it was a big event with celebrity judges, and I was always able to handle the ball and do dribbling well, and I did a trick where I spun the ball on the pen, put the spinning pen in my mouth, the ball kept spinning. I won the event. Wow. I got the sneakers. And Nike then invited me to be a part of some campaigns and commercials they were doing. And so again, it wasn't something I was looking to do, but immediately when I did these commercials and then I started actually getting the fix and I call it like the fever, where I was like, okay, this is interesting. And I went into classes and studied and just have been able to slowly build from that. But I mean, I did everything from, my first role was getting hit with a crowbar by Giancarlo Esposito in a not great film. But, so I didn't start, I got to start really sort of at the bottom, which was great. It was a great experience to sort of understand the process. And, again, I think little by little, I just became more passionate about it. The craft, studying the craft, and with some luck in there as well and timing, I've been able to just continue on the journey.
That's great. Eugenio, I want to contrast two different films of yours. Coda, which won the Academy Award last year for Best Picture. Yeah. You play this character that is the bridge between the deaf parents and the hearing daughter. And then in this new film of Radical, you play this teacher who inspires children on the border who have nothing in their school really, except their imagination and their ability to learn.
Exactly.
Those are such uplifting characters. How did that come about, these two characters, and what did you do to prepare for those roles?
Well, it was a lot of preparation, especially for Coda. I have to be like 4 months taking piano lessons, and I knew how to play the piano a little bit, but I really need to do the entire. It's complicated because I was coached by the same coach who coached Ryan Gosling at La La Land. So there's a technique to do all that, but so I had to memorize a lot of things in the piano. I need to know how to teach kids to sing, prepare the character. It was a lot of work. But and with Radical the same, I'm portraying a professor that exists, and it was very threatening to have him on set because he was there watching me. So it was really scary when you're playing someone who is alive and it's watching you. So, but I never tried to make a picture of him. It was just the essence of the character. But I wanted to make a difference in my community. That's why I started doing this kind of films. I realized when I was doing just comedy that people were laughing a lot, they were really entertained, but at the end, when they were walking out of the theater, they got nothing. And then after I did Instructions Not Included, that, by the way, today is the 10th anniversary of Instructions Not Included. I realized that people came out of the theater talking about the movie, and they were touched, and they were talking about it. And I knew that I need to change something, that I need to start doing films with not just where you can laugh and have fun, but also movies that touch your heart and make you think. And that's what we started looking at, me and my business partner Ben Odell, that is here with me. And we started looking for stories that could change our world, that could make a difference when you watch it. And Radical is one of them. It's a beautiful, true story.
It really is. Tell us, Angel, what's next on the horizon for you, and how did that come about as well? Because I'm sure it was a success. Blue Beetle actually surpassed Barbie. I think in breaking the records, Barbie was #1, and then Blue Beetle came out, and it became #1 over Barbie. So you clearly have gotten the ratings and the attendance at the box office. What did that do for your career?
It has been like a snowball effect that came, I think, right after Charm City Kings as well. Because at the same time that we were doing pre-production for Blue Beetle, I was doing this docu-series on Menudo that also premiered in in HBO Max, and I was co-writing. Because we're on strike, co-writing a new Transformers movie with Marco Ramirez that we're hoping to be set in Latin America car culture. And then thanks to Blue Beetle and what me and the team, because it was a team effort, what we were able to do and protect in terms of the emotion and the heart and not sacrifice authenticity for spectacle. We had I have now the blessing of like being attached to other projects like Wrecking Crew for MGM and Amazon with Jason Momoa and Dave Bautista. I've been also developing couple TV shows for them as well, with like Gareth Dunel Alcocer, who we met during the process of Blue Beetle. He's the writer of Blue Beetle, and the Dominican writer Junot Diaz, about the story of Porfirio Rubirosa, the OG James Bond. Yeah, people don't know that, but the OG James Bond is Dominican.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and other projects that I cannot talk about that luckily have come as a result of what we were able to accomplish with Blue Beetle, and I'm very thankful for that.
And before I get to question and answers from the audience, I wanted to ask Ramon, last night you were telling me that in order to accept the role of Will Trent, which is a great show, you wanted to be a producer on the show. Why is that so important for you to be a producer on the show as well as to be the title lead?
I mean, for me, and it sounds like for Eugenio and also for Angel, I mean, I think, being a voice and having a voice in the creative process has become really critical for me. So when that project came along, the only way I was going to accept it is if I could be involved in it creatively, early on from the development of it. And I think that's a big part of the process for us, is to not only get ourselves telling our stories authentically in front of the camera, getting Latino crews behind the camera, but executives, getting people a seat at that table where these, I'm sure we've all sat at meetings where you're pitching, and you're pitching to people who have no idea about the Latino culture. And it's very hard to sort of like, okay, as opposed to if we're speaking to someone that gets it, understands the struggle, or understands the culture, the specificity, it resonates that much deeper. And so for me, I wanted to make sure, and moving forward, and I'm producing things as well, and want to direct as well, so I've got all these other passions that I'm pushing, but with the real objective of trying to move that needle, and to help hopefully open doors as Eugenio has, as other people that came before us have paved that way for us to be where we are right now, which there is movement happening, there is progress. And I'm hoping to just continue, I want to continue pushing that. So being a producer, and I also imagine, like for me growing up, when I saw I Love Lucy, I'll never forget the impact it had when I saw Arnez as a producer, Desi Arnez as a producer on the project, Desilu Productions. I was like, oh, like, okay, he's a character in the show, but he's also involved behind the scenes in this process. And I just think it's a huge impact for also audiences, for youth, for people coming up to see that, Ramon Rodriguez as a producer, Angel Manuel Soto, Eugenio Derbez producing, direct, like, it gives us the hope, oh, okay, we can do that too, maybe. So it's been critical for me, and it's something I'm very much focused on and hoping to continue pushing the paves that have been set before us.
Great, thank you. Let's turn it to the audience. We didn't get a lot of chance to do question and answer before. Oscar?
Primeramente, okay, es un honor
Gracias.
No, I have a question for you. I think it was very clear when your career took a turn into the American market from Mexico. Would you be able to talk about maybe some challenges that you had in transitioning into American market, or maybe even some things that helped you break through to be a successful Mexican actor in LA?
The crossover.
The crossover. Well, that's very interesting. I always heard that it was impossible to break in because there's a lot of, it's hard to succeed in Hollywood. And the first time I tried, I came to this country and I was pitching to all the executives in the studios, and I came with my ratings from Mexico, and I was like, oh, look, my TV shows are the #1 in where? Mexico. But in the US, have you done something in the US? I was like, no. Okay, we'll call you. Thank you very much. So it didn't mean anything for them. Anything I did in Mexico, it was nothing for them. And every time I pitch an idea, they used to say, thank you, but it's too Mexican. And I was like, what are you talking about? I mean, we in Latin America, I grew up, and everyone in Latin America grows up watching these movies from the US and from, I don't know, Apollo 13, from the NASA, and we didn't even know what a rocket is. We've never seen a rocket in our lives, and we love it. Or Erin Brockovich. There's nothing more specific about an American woman fighting with a gas company. I mean, and we loved it. What are you talking about? It's too Mexican. I mean, they were so close to understand that concept. Now, because of the pandemic, everyone watching for more than a year, everything, they start discovering the Squid Game, Money Heist, Lupin, all those series and movies from all around the world, and then they start loving reading subtitles that it was too scary for them. So I think that they're opening, and now they understand. That's why they fell in love with directors like Cuarón, Iñárritu del Toro, Ángel Manuel Soto, because we have a Latin flavor. So what made me break into Hollywood? After trying and trying and trying, one day I said, I'm done. I haven't seen my family. I'm spending all my free time traveling to the US, having meetings, and nothing happens. I'm done. I'm going back to Mexico, and I'm gonna do my Familia Peluche. And I'm gonna finally do and direct my first movie, Instructions Not Included. So I quit the American dream. This is true. And I went back to Mexico, and the first thing I did was I started shooting Instructions Not Included, and it came out, breaks all the records, and that movie opens all the doors for me in the US. Literally from Friday to Monday, I woke up and my agents were calling me, we have meetings with all the executives in Hollywood, they want to meet you. Thursday you're meeting with Jimmy Fallon, Wednesday with Larry King, blah, 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 blah. And my life changed in that moment. So basically it was my people from Mexico, same thing that Ángel Manuel said. When I was traveling to the US, nobody opened the door for me. I went back to Mexico, I did my stuff with my flavor, with my thing, with my sensitivity, and that work opened the door for me in Hollywood.
Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Un placer.
Gracias.
My name is Maria José Valle. I am an actor, writer, Chilena, which there are not a lot of. And Pedro Pascal is leading the way.
Yeah.
I'm right behind him, let's put it that way. More of a comment I wanted to say. This is really, really helpful because as someone who I'm a mom, I have 3 kids, I have a career. I started in the entertainment industry when I was 36 and about to have my 3rd child. And I live here in this area, and everyone said it's not possible. You can't do this. You have to move to LA. You have to move to LA. And I was like, Will, I was like, my husband, I can't. And it was great to hear you were in Puerto Estoy. But I just want to say thank you, and especially with Tipas, those things are big. I think the first time I ever saw myself represented on TV, they weren't even Latino, it was my Big Fat Greek Wedding in 2002. And I took my entire Big Fat Chile family to see it, like, millions of Chilenos. I'm like, look, the little drink is a bisco, and the tias. And it was, that sort of opened up to, a lot of things came after, but just that, it was like you said, like, I don't know anything about Greeks, but I could identify with that, and so could a U.S. English-speaking market. And so that's sort of like, okay, and that's a lot of my comedy and my writing and what I want to do, so, no vemos.
Thank you. John?
How much freedom did you give your cast to add and pepper in their experience and their language from their Hispanic upbringing? Because those words that they said, I turned to my wife and said, I only heard your dad say that. I've never heard it.
I gave them a lot, like as much as they can, and as much as it made sense also. But I had the privilege to work with professionals, and we developed a relationship because it was just the actors, the writer, and me. Sure, some crew members, but like the reason why you're producing, like we didn't have a Latino producer, so it is exhausting to have to explain everything. When everybody's like, yeah, we get it, and then they don't get it, and then you have to explain it, and they're like, yeah, but can it be less what? Less Latino? Like you want to do, then you shouldn't be here, You should step and let somebody from the culture do it. Like, you're a white guy in the US, you'll get another job. You'll be fine. Just let somebody who knows do it, I hope this doesn't. But, it's just like it just makes it harder, unnecessarily harder. Because, everybody complains if there's too much Spanish, but nobody complains if there's too much Elvish. Who speaks Elvish? But the whole movie can be half Elvish and you read subtitles and nobody bats an eye. But you have to read Spanish, like, oh my God. So I'm like fighting that, right? It has to be until Spielberg does a movie that doesn't put subtitles. I'm like, well, if he did it, then it's okay. I'm like, okay. Well, thank you, Spielberg, for that. But we've been trying to do it for a long time. So, segue. So to that end, yes, like I wanted them to bring their experiences to the picture. As a Latino, I'm Puerto Rican, but the writer is Mexican. We found common grounds, right? We found what is the things that unite us. What are the things that bridge, right? We're talking about bridging. What are the things that bridge those gaps between Latin American cultures? And the thing is, like, more things, we have so much more things in common than we have in differences. And that's where we started to bond. Sometimes what he thought was specific to his culture was also specific to my culture. And that's where, like, okay, so let's build off of that. So then when we have all the actors that come from different parts of Mexico into the picture, like Elpidia Carrillo, like in her village, they call insects chombos. And she's like, oh, can I call it a chombo? Because that's how I'm like, of course, like, I believe that within our specificities also lies universality. And like you said, like, our whole lives we've been seeing movies made by people from the US. And we take them, we eat them, we consume them. What's the big deal?
Exactly.
like you won't get darker by watching our movies. Like, chill. Like, I don't get it. So like, that's the whole idea. Like, just open up your minds a little bit, and maybe you're gonna see parts of you represented, and see that we're not that different as a humanity. Yeah. Like, I grew up also watching Korean cinema and anime, and I loved it. I connected with those. So why can't Why do we have to give everything and they can't just receive one, you know? So by doing more stuff like that and by bringing people that bring their own experiences, like not just from people from Mexico, but as Mexican Americans, right? As first and second generation, as Chicanos, who are integral part of the US. You see that we're not that different, that they've been trying to divide us. But it's up to us to fight that division, and I think through that specificity. So yes, that's a long answer to say that I allowed them to be themselves and channel their history through these characters so that it opens up the doors for people to see themselves represented in a more broader way.
Angel, tell us what it was like to work with George Lopez, because he did such a great job in that film, and I was really surprised. You know, you sort of brought his career back to life.
Well, I mean, he understood the assignment. And he understood what it represented. You know, not just for him, but also like what this is gonna mean for people that are gonna watch the movie and for Latinos and the culture in general. And he took it to heart. Like he had shows that he will postpone because scheduling conflicts, and he will postpone them, and he gave it all for the show, for the movie. And at the same time, you know, having him, he's playing the quirky, funny, conspiracy theorist uncle that we all have. But he also has this gravitas and grounded component to what he encompasses in the whole journey of the Latino experience. And also like being able to like follow the script, but at the same time, the same way that I let Elpidia say certain lines, or I let other kids or Adriana Barraza express the way she expresses herself, or Damian for that matter. For him, we also did one take that we called it the Funcy. And that's to Harvey Guillen. That's what he told us, that in what we do in the shadows, they have a Funcy take, which is like everybody does whatever they want. Like just have fun. And so we did that. And those were the moments that he could lash out and kind of like embrace his strength as a comedian and deliver a bunch of like random, absurd, hilarious things that, because we already did the exercise of being in the script and being in the story and being with the energy of the film, everything he was ad-libbing was part of it. It didn't make no sense. Mm-hmm. It could be absurd, but it's on brand. Uh-huh. So it was very awesome to work with him. I'll do it again.
That's great. Augusto?
Yes, more than questions, a comment for you, Eugenio. I just want to say, I understand your transition and your development as an actor, telling the stories like Coda and Radical, and I love it. I love that it's kind of like Adam Sandler with Punch Drunk Love, or like Rain Over Me, right? Like it shows your real capacity as an actor, especially being a comedian for many, many, many years. But I just wanted to tell you this. I grew up with my father working 10 to 12 hours a day and not being home at all. And he would come home and we would have dinner and have the TV right there and watch Al Derecho y Al Revés. And that's when we really became a family, and your comedy make us happy and bring families together. So please, you never underestimate the power that you have as a comedian as well. And I love for you to keep growing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we may have time for one more question over here.
We identified as, I identified us as La Familia Peluche. I used to always mess around with my mom and be like, ¿por qué no eres una niña? So yeah, that's one of our, I guess one of our core memories, like he mentioned, like, you know, my parents worked all day, came home, we turned on TV, eat dinner, watched La Familia Peluche, we laughed all the time, we made our jokes. To this day, I still call this Familia Peluche. And my question is, how do all you guys feel representing us? I know you have like, you know, like it was Baja La Misma Luna, we have Instructions Not Included, we have these like mom cry all the time. And you know, it was a really like heart-touching movie. And then Instructions Not Included represents, you know, the single families. You know, many of us come from, you know, I have some friends who, you know, just have one parent present and they didn't have instructions. There are no instructions to be a parent. And then you have more representation in your movies on it. And you know, I just want to know how you guys feel giving us a representation, because you know, many of us here are chasing our dreams to give our self-representation, our family representation, and you know, as well as our whole community representation. So I just want to know what your thoughts and feelings are representing the Hispanic community.
Well, first of all, for me, after so many years first of all, I need to tell you that I'm very grateful for your kind words, guys. I feel every time they tell me what's the difference between the Latins in the U.S. and Mexico, I tell them that in Mexico I feel that I'm just like the famous guy or the guy from television. But here I feel that every time you guys look at me, you're watching also your family, where you grew up. You remember when you were watching the show with your father or with your grandmother or whatever. So it's a different kind of, so I feel very grateful, because I feel there's much love here in the US, and thank you for watching my shows and filling on the theaters. Because of you, I'm here. So I felt the obligation of doing some changes. I swore to myself that when it was in my hands, I should change the narrative. And that's why I opened a production company, because I felt that it was really important to change the way they see us on screen. For many, many years, Latins were just hired to portray the gardener, the gang member, you know, always negative. And I realized when Instructions Not Included came out, a lot of people told me this is one of the first times we see a Latino and on screen who is a nice guy, who is a good dad, who even if he doesn't speak English, he's a great guy, and he's succeeding in the US. And I understood that there was a need of us watching us on the screen in a good way. So since then, I've been struggling and fighting to change the narrative. That's why, for example, when they offered us Overboard, I remember they were like, oh, it's a great project, because, you know, it's the movie is about this rich lady and a carpenter. You can play the carpenter, and we can find an actress, an American actress, to play the billionaire. And I was like, what about the opposite? And we fought a lot to make that change. And I think it was really, really important for our community to finally see that the billionaire is the Mexican and the pizza delivery girl is an American. So that's the kind of narrative that we need to start changing, to portray Latinos in a different way, in a positive way. And that's been my goal since I moved to this country.
I think we may have time for one more question, or are we done?
Sure. I mean, I would just say, you know, I think we all feel an incredible responsibility, you know. The medium of television and film is powerful. You know, it really gives people sort of a feeling like, oh, that's, if you're perceived a certain way, it creates those thoughts of how people view you. And so like Angel said, like Manuel Soto said, the way Eugenio said, it's like, you got to be very careful about how you present that. And I think for long enough, we've been presented in sort of stereotypical, the misconceptions, the things that he listed earlier. That's been sort of the regular narrative for the most part. And there are people that are fighting the good fight to try to make that difference, to sort of show us in a different light, because it's powerful. How, you know, when you go home and you watch it, and if you keep viewing yourself and you seeing yourself a certain way, it actually affects how you view yourself. You know, it's a very powerful thing that you're being told. So I think the things that I'm fighting for, it feels like everyone up here is fighting for, is for us to be able to tell our own stories. Is empowering, right? And it comes from a place of authenticity, specificity, where we go, okay, we can view ourselves in different ways. And by the way, I'm not even against, personally, it's when it's sort of just simplified characters. It's not that you can't be a a drug dealer, whatever. But like so often, it used to always be just a very simple, you're the bad guy, you're this, and that's that. And it's like, we're complicated human beings, everyone is. And how about we just show real, complicated, compelling characters? Whatever that may look like, I think that's really critical. And so I personally, I take on that responsibility of trying to be really mindful. I still get roles where I'm like, okay, you're still trying to, I see where, there's nothing else here. You're still trying to perpetuate a very specific thing. And I've been much more mindful of that and being really, okay, I don't want to push that. This character is much more interesting, sheds a new light. So we try to be really accountable for that. I got to go back to my community, I got to face my people, and I want to make sure I can face them in a really great way, saying, look, we're trying to push the needle. We're really trying to make a difference here, and open doors, provide new opportunities. Because that's another thing I feel like we just lack in general, opportunities to direct, to produce. And that's why I went back to my first original thought, which is like getting people in executive positions at these large studios, at these companies. That is critical. If we get them there and we're able to sort of nurture those people that are trying to get to those positions, support them, that would be really phenomenal. I think it will help also really make a difference, and it'll sprinkle down.
So thank you all for being here, and thank you to our panel. It's been an incredible conversation, and we look forward to seeing you later tonight. Yeah. Thank you.